Hello and welcome. Today we will talk about a triple Olympic champion, two-time Olympic champion in the 1500, the Australian Grant Hackett. We will discuss 8 things that clearly make him an ultra-efficient swimmer. To start, before discussing his arm stroke, let's begin by talking about his breathing technique. To achieve a high-level breath, there are 5 steps to follow. The step 0, crucially beforehand, is to be streamlined and submerged from head to toe outside of breaths. This will serve in the first step, which is to stay streamlined, keeping the head in position as long as possible before inhaling. If the head is turned too early while still propelling, it mechanically creates resistance. The idea is to keep the head in place, facing the pool bottom, for as long as possible before turning the head and taking a breath. The goal is to have half the face in the water if it's possible, or at least the ear or cheek on the water. It is even clearer in this front view slightly in depth. Here, he will inhale, always on the right side, and the head starts turning only when the hand passes vertically over his shoulder. The rotation is initiated with the shoulder roll at this point, and only after the full extension does the face clear when the hand exits the water, or just before the hand leaves the water, and the elbow starts to rise. The face is cleared, and the inhalation begins after the end of the propulsion. I will later revisit this key position number 3, which doesn't extend the maximum, doesn't touch the thigh completely. I will come back to the arm stroke theme that we will see right after. The second step after staying streamlined for a long time is to exhale. As seen here, to exhale the right volume. Blowing too much will increase the time of the inhalation with the face out of the water. When the face is out and it takes time to inhale being above the water, it mechanically activates the legs more. So, quick inhalation is the third step for an efficient breath, because an efficient inhaling is always on a motor pause, in other words, on a gliding time. Therefore, it is essential to be as streamlined and submerged as possible. Quick inhalation, as I mentioned, is about finding the right volume for oneself. As one progresses, exhaling intensely and taking in more air becomes possible, as one can inhale quickly. The third step, let's call it that, is to keep the arm in projectile in front. If the arm drops, it creates resistance and prevents transitioning to another propulsive movement. Here he finishes inhaling, puts his head back, prepares the catch, and then, when ready, he starts pulling the water, moving on to another propulsive movement. When I say the reposition behind, what does it mean? It means after inhalation, put the face parallel to the pool bottom, gaze directly towards the bottom, the neck as flat as possible to resubmerge. And Hackett does this very well. He remains as streamlined as possible in the water. This is crucial to keeping the heels and feet on the surface and reducing resistance. Then he resubmerges, passing under the water surface to eliminate the wave resistances. Look, we don't see Hackett here. So, repositioning quickly after inhalation is the 4th step. In any case, be well positioned and immersed from head to toe as streamlined as possible. The 5th step, as mentioned earlier, is to be able to chain after, and so to have the arm in projectile. We come back to step 3 to be able to transition to a propulsive stroke after inhalation. It is the 5th or 4th step bis. The idea is to keep the projectile arm in front, so that after, one can push the foot, roll to the other side, and work on propulsion afterward after inhalation. All this to regain speed. Because the inhalation was during a gliding motor pause, it is necessary to re-accelerate afterward to relaunch. Speaking of relaunching, accelerating the stroke, let's discuss the 3 key positions for efficient arm stroke that I can last. That's simply it. One must be able to chain without struggling. So the first thing here, this is Hackett. What we see is that he has a catch with the elbow very high, very close to the water surface, very close to the line of his shoulders, as his mobility allows. But the key takeaway here is that one should be as far forward as possible of the shoulder line for the greatest possible amplitude, depending on one's wingspan and mobility. A high elbow catch allows what? It allows a lighter force in the water, but more acceleration. He focuses more on speed, quickly pushing water backward, rather than using a stroke by taking water a bit deeper. Now, second key position, what I call momentum. It's when everything is in line with the shoulders. When I say everything, I mean the hand, which I mentioned earlier. After the catch slightly moves outside, more or less, depending on the depth one wants. A high catch, closer to the body's midline, the head column basin axis, will have less depth, but will be simpler to accelerate after. And if one wants more propulsion, then the catch will be a bit more vertical to the elbow. So going back to my key position number 2, we see here he clearly passes the hand vertically of the shoulder where we have the most force, the most power. If the hand were further away from the body in this position, we would have less force. It's like trying to pull up or to do a muscle up with arms spread apart. It's much more difficult than having hands and arms in line with the shoulders. What we can also see is that his elbow here is approximately at 90 degrees. that it depends on individuals, more or less deep. With a high catch, the elbow will be closer to 90 degrees, but with a slightly lower catch, the hand will be a bit lower too, so the elbow won't be exactly at 90 degrees. But the principle to respect is the hand passing vertically of the shoulder to have the most force and the easiest acceleration backward. After the second key position, we have the third key position, just before the end of the pull, or rather just before the end of the pull. What happens here when looking at his movement? The catch, forearms and hands perpendicular to the water surface to take as much water as possible with the palm, forearm and arm. At the end of the pull, the arm will be close to the body. The forearm and the hand remain oriented as long as possible. This is the third key position to have the maximum amplitude. If the arm were not close to the body, almost completely in contact, it would be spread apart, resulting in less amplitude and more muscular energy expenditure. And here what we see is that the elbow clears, and it doesn't seek maximum extension, as seen in many mid-distance and sprint swimmers. It doesn't aim for maximum extension to save the triceps, and because the end of the pull, the end of propulsion here will not be as efficient. It's not where we can displace the most water, especially at race speed. I'm not saying it shouldn't be done when swimming slowly, because the idea is to learn to swim with a big arm stroke. If one doesn't push when swimming slowly, one won't reach far in front, and one won't achieve the roll towards 80, 85, 90 degrees, a roll that helps to better position and reduce resistance as much as possible for advancement. Speaking of that, I put in the description the magic palm exercise in my free sensory week, an exercise already tested by tens of thousands of people in the French-speaking community, an exercise that will help you gain amplitude, engage the arm more easily in front, and thus prepare for the catch work that will come next. To realize this even better, let's watch this video here, because here we can see more clearly that when his right arm clears, the elbow comes out and it's not fully extended. The arm is slightly flexed before the relaxed recovery forward. I could have talked about that as well, but the idea was really to have a video focused on his strengths and things that could be clearly seen in the video. This stroke economy, in terms of pulls, breathing, you'll find it by swimming bigger and bigger, especially at the end of the pull. You might shorten the end of the stroke by swimming longer sets, concentrating on what you do with your triceps, arms, sensations, and sensory feelings. This is where you can find the right solutions by also looking at your times, heart rate, stroke count, in short, your total energy expenditure. So, could he have done something better technically? Maybe. The hypothesis I have, could he have stayed submerged a little longer? Because here, he is already on the air recovery of the arm. He emerges at 3.27 and 8, and he only inhales at 3 and 28.2. Could he have stayed submerged 1/10 or 2/10 longer? This is a hypothesis. We'll see with the future videos that I will analyze, Yannick Agnel and others, to see the difference, the timing they had regarding this. We should take a ratio. It would be more interesting because Agnel didn't do the 1500 like Hackett. But eventually, that could be the path to consider. So feel free to let me know in the comments what you think, if technically you see other things I haven't talked about. There were certainly other things because I didn't talk about the projectile body outside of breaths at all. And with that, as usual, I wish you excellent progress and a smooth glide.